All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of YouTube. This is Pastor Dowell, and I'm coming to you this morning with another edition of Breakfast Bread. Well, it's no secret that in our society that people want a conscious null, nil, and void of any conviction or any in it whatsoever at all. They don't want the creator of the universe to be dictating or trying to put any of his laws, his statutes, and commandments, or any of his influence upon their lives. But at the same time, nobody wants to go to a living, eternal, burning hell. Well, that's just part of the price for the cause. But, you know, we're going to go over a few scriptures here this morning. We're going to show you exactly what's going on because, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on out there. And I need for you to listen to me, hear me out, and listen to me very carefully. You know, out there in that Christian church world, you're seeing the spirit of lawlessness, the spirit of iniquity working. And I don't get offended when I see all this crazy stuff that's going on out there in this Christian church world, because I already know full well that the descendants and the people of this book, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, Daniel, Isaiah, Jesus, Paul, and Peter, I already know that they were not Christians. They were Hebrews and they were Israelites. And so I understand it full well. So when I see these religions using our book, and then you see all this perversion and you see all these things that they promote in their lives that doesn't resemble that book right there, it does not shock me one bit at all. But we are living in a time of lawlessness. And, of course, my job is to pull as many of y'all's people out of those wicked assemblies and those wicked churches and the forms and fashions of this world so we can be good ambassadors. But in order to do that, we have to follow the words that the Apostle Paul gave us in 2 Timothy 4:2. He starts and says, preach the word. Be instant in season and out of season. He says, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. And of course, what are people not going to do in the time that we're living in right now? Well, they're not going to be reproved. They're definitely not going to be rebuked because everybody believes that their opinions, their feelings, and their emotions is above the actual written word. So when you get a man of authority of the scriptures and have a command of the scriptures like I do, begin to speak to you what the word says, because I've done my own due diligence and my own independent research, and I've checked out these facts before I adopt a position, you'll get people out there that will fuss and fight and argue with you tooth and nail. Now, you have to understand, you're not really fussing and fighting and arguing against me. I'm not a contentious man. I don't sit there and do childish things like that. But that's the job of anyone that is a preacher. And then it says, for the time will come that they will not endure sound doctrine. Look at the fight that is inside of people today. Look at the devil, huh? Look at the fight that is inside of people today when you reprove them and correct them, especially on certain behaviors and certain doctrines that people have embraced and have placed in their own minds, and the traditions that they have put above the commandments of the Most High Yah. Look at the fight that is inside of people. Whenever you give them sound doctrine, I see the spirit of the age, what the apostles had already called, what the very Messiah, Jesus Christ himself, had already told us about would take place in this world, in this society, and in this time. It's here now. The spirit of lawlessness, the spirit of people working iniquity and commandment breaking to where they want to live a life to where, you know, they don't want anybody pressing on their conscience, trying to tell them what's right and what's wrong. Well, we see it. We see it in all these churches. We see it in assemblies all over the place, that the spirit of lawlessness or where people are not going to endure sound doctrine, it's here. But what people will do is this. And Paul goes on to say, but after their own lust, you see that it depends on what interests you. What is your opinion? What's in your heart? What drives you? See, that becomes your God. That becomes your personal drive in life. It's your own lust. So after your own lust, what will people do? Will they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears? So people will actually practice the behavior where they will go out and look for people that speaks and says the things that they want to hear because it genders to their lust. And I make no apologies for it. I tell the truth straight up. But there are people out there that are preachers for hire. They actually tell you the things that you want to hear. And because the heart is already deceived and is not being led and guided by the spirit of truth of the word, they go out and they look for prosperity preachers and teachers. They go out and look for churches and men who would preach a gospel according to their choice, what they personally believe, without knowledge of the word. And when they do that, they have found what they want. And then Paul goes on to say, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth. You see how many people just literally fight me tooth and nail, yet they will not provide any scriptural reference. Yet they will not have their own personal preachers, their own personal teachers of churches ever have a civil debate with me on particular subjects and topics, because I'm going to stick only with that word. You know, I've learned over the years that I'm not smart enough, nor am I intelligent enough to think outside of that Bible and to think that I understand what's going on when I have a historical reference of successes and failures that have gone on before me, that I can really truly trust in that record. I really truly am, because I've had a personal experience with the Father himself, and I just, choose. I make the conscious decision to choose to follow his ways. Now, I understand that, hey, Jesus didn't commit no sin, and yet they put him to death. John the Baptist, he ran his mouth, reproved and rebuked, they put him to death. And of course, death today is equated in the time we live in as just nothing, just pure hatred. So I say many, many things today that people just literally would rather see me dead. Not because what I'm saying is not the truth, it's because it's the spirit of truth that hits the heart of the matter, and people don't want their heart on display. They don't want to hear that when they have already personally approved and sanctioned their own lifestyle, which is contrary to y'all. Now, it's totally irrelevant to me whether they receive or reject. I already know what the book says that they will do to you and how they will treat you. But, hey, it says that they will turn their ears away from the truth and shall be turned into fables, meaning they will be turned into lies. Now, when you turn into lies, when you're young, you're youthful, you may think that you're getting away with all this stuff, but as you get older, you're going to find out that the fruit of lies that you receive, that they have just made your conscience and mind like concrete, and you've gotten to the point where you cannot even be converted. That happened many, many times, and that's the position you don't want yourself in. If you're young, and you're able to be convicted, and you're able to change and turn from your ways, it behooves you to do that. It really, truly would, and to depend on the creator of the universe, who has sent his Holy Spirit to feed us all with his spirit of truth. Now, but set yourself for war and get ready, because you will lose family, kinfolks, friends, neighbors, relatives. I mean, you're going to lose them all, because they will hate you. Not because you're continuing in sin, or you're living in sin, or you're practicing a life of sin. They will hate you because they hated him first. And they will hate you because you no longer run to the same excess of riotous living, and you no longer share the same opinions that they share. So in Matthew 24:11, Christ said, for many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity is nothing more than the spirit of lawlessness, meaning people will not have any rule or any government. Everybody will walk after what they believe that is right to their own mind and own heart, and they're not going to hear anything that nobody else has to say. And of course, this is what this world has promoted. Because iniquity shall abound, look what's happening. The love of many is waxing cold. You ought to see how vicious people are just because you choose to be a man or a woman of truth, honor, integrity, because you choose to follow the principles and the teaching of that Bible, where you separate yourself from the heathen of this world to live a separated, holy, quiet, and peaceful life. Man, their love gets cold towards you. Why? Because of lawlessness that is in them. Now remember, Christ said over and over again that he's going to say to many, you depart from me, you that work iniquity, because I never knew you. And the truth is, Christ don't know any of these people out here that are so-called lifting up their hands to Jesus, and yet they are lawless, breaking the commandments, especially the 7-day Sabbath, and breaking and putting tradition above the commandment of God by celebrating Christmas and Easter and Sunday, and contrary to what that book says. Yet and still they want to be welcome into the eternal kingdom. That's not going to happen. And you need to know that before the breath goes out of your body so you don't be deceived. So it's irrelevant to whether you hear or forbear. We're all going to stand before the king. It makes no difference whether you're a believer or unbeliever. Irrelevant, totally irrelevant. And we're going to be judged according to the deeds that were done in our life. And we're going to be judged by every idle word that's been said. And every thought and every intent of a man's heart is going to come out in the open, and it's going to be on display for all of heaven, all of glory to be able to see. Ain't nobody going to hide from that. And that's just the truth. But then he gives encouraging words and says, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. So this is an endurance process right here, because you're going to come up against pains, and you're going to have people coming against you. You're going to be against wind and tide. Endure. Well, anyway, this morning, I was thinking about a couple of situations I saw here on the internet with preachers and teachers and stuff. And I thought I'd give a little bit of wisdom right here, because you see, I'm a firm believer that there's no way you can be reproved or corrected by this word unless his word dwells in your heart. Because the Holy Spirit has to have something for you to have the ability to recall, and it must be in your spirit. So if you're doing something and you don't know you're wrong, you've got to have the Spirit of truth in you. You've got to have that word in you to reprove you and correct you. Well, over in Ecclesiasticus, that's in the Apocrypha, the 8th chapter, starting at the 3rd verse, it says, strive not with a man that is full of tongue, and heap not wood upon his fire. In other words, you get people who are contentious, who are argumentative, who have always just want to keep up a bunch of mess because of bitterness, or that because they're wrathful and they're vengeful and stuff. He said, hey, you cut that off. You that are wise, just cut that off. Don't strive with them, and do not give more wood to their fire. Let them go on. Let them say what they're going to say, but you go on yourself, because you don't want to strive with a person like that. Then it says, just not with a rude man, lest thy ancestors be disgraced. Some of our ancestors had impeccable character. They had integrity in hearts and minds. And they actually left with many of us wisdom that we should apply to our hearts in everyday life. And in order for us to be an example, not only for ourselves, but for our children's children. And so this wisdom is carrying on to us so that we can carry it on to others. So don't be foolish. Don't jest, and don't be doing a bunch of he and a ha, especially with people who don't fear the Most High. But then it says this, going to the 5th verse in Ecclesiasticus, the 8th chapter, starting at verse 5. Reproach not a man that turneth from sin. You hear that? But remember that we are all worthy of punishment. If you ever see a man who may have got caught in sin, like King David did, or someone who has turned from sin, your best course of action is to not go and speak against him or reproach him if he's turned from it. If he has turned from it. This vicious spirit that we're living in this generation, because judgment and sentence against an evil work is not executed expediently. Therefore, it is fully set in the heart of man to do evil and to do wicked. We often say, and you hear it all the time in the Christian realm, judge not. And they don't understand what that judge means, because a righteous man loves judgment, and a righteous man will judge. Yes, he will too, because he's been given that judgment. And that judge not is not telling you don't judge. It says, just not lest ye be not judged. For with the same judgment you judge, it will be meet back to you again. So no matter what way you judge in life, whatever way you put yourself up, whatever way you carry yourself, you better make sure you don't trip up and fall, because that same judgment is going to come back to you again. So you do judge. You judge everything. And that's how you do it. And that is the truth. But, you got people that have turned away from sin. And then you got people who want to continue to keep remembering these people's sin, who have turned from it and gone on. Yet and still, every single one of us have been born in sin, shaping in iniquity. Some of you are still living in sin. I've seen on this thing people who have turned from sin and have gone on and walked in the newness of life. That repentance have taught them a lesson. And now they are more holy, more sanctified. But then you got these workers of iniquity out here. These people who don't live nothing. A bunch of drunks, whoremongers, lies, cheats, scoundrels, rotten, iniquitous people turn around making judgments on people that have turned from sin. Well, you got a judgment coming, and it's coming from the king. And nobody can do nothing about your vicious, vindictive attitude and heart right now, because you're full of strength. You think you're getting away with it. But you know what? The breath is going to go out of your body one day, just as sure as it's going to go out of mine. And we all are going to stand before the King. Nobody's going to escape it. Ooh-wee. You're going to wish then. It's going to be too late then, but you're going to wish then that your heart was right then. But if you won't be reproved, you won't be corrected, you won't be instructed, can't help you. Then it says this. Look what it says. In verse 6, dishonor not a man in his old age. Y'all hear that? For even some of us wax old. And of course, a lot of us forgetting that we're going to be old too one day. So you don't dishonor an old man in his old age. You just flat out don't do it. As a matter of fact, it teaches you to honor them. It teaches you to respect them. We've done lost that because we're in a time of iniquity and lawlessness. It's just sad. And then it says, rejoice not over thy greatest enemy being dead, but remember that we all die. And you know, when death comes, and it will come to us all, and even if it's someone you hate, you despise, which you should not do, that don't mean it's going to stop you, but you shouldn't do it. Sometimes people go, well, I'm glad that they finally got what they get. Well, guess what? Death comes to us all. And a lot of times, you know, people don't understand, but we're going to pay for a lot of things that we have said, things we've done, and even the way we carry ourselves. My advice to you is don't pay too much attention to all these people out here who are not showing you how to live this life in holiness, in peace, in truth, and righteousness. Be careful of those who are bitter, because you'll get swallowed up in a gall of bitterness. And you'll go out and you'll defile many, just like the bitter person has defiled you. Know that the human spirit, it's a cancer. It's like bacteria. It loves controversy, and it loves exploiting everybody else's iniquity while it sets back and seem to other people, or at least it make itself clean in its own eyes. You know, people do that. They make themselves clean in their own eyes. I hope that this morning's breakfast bread has been able to give you some wisdom, especially those of you who are saints of the Most High. Yeah, I hope that y'all been able to say something to encourage your hearts and mind, give you something to live by, and that is the truth. And that's the truth straightway.